Suddenly, I'm not so excited about my birthday. Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today our movie in the middle is Longlegs. Longlegs is the newest psychological thriller following Special Agent Lee Harker as she works tirelessly and dives deep into her own past to catch an occult-following serial killer. It stars Maika Monroe, Nicolas Cage, Blair Underwood, and Alicia Witt. So this movie has very quickly become incredibly hyped. I didn't realize there was this much hype or recognition from people outside just, movie critics and people who just follow movies a lot about this movie, considering it is a very indie, low-budget, psychological thriller that just looks, like an A24 sort of weird movie. Like, this movie's budget is $10 million. That is $5 million over the official line for low budget. That's obviously ridiculous because it's $5 million, but, relatively it is low budget. And with all of that, our theater that I saw this in was packed on a Monday night. That shows you just how hyped people are for this movie and how intriguing it is. Like, the marketing for this movie was fantastic. I remember the first time I saw the trailer, I remember thinking, just like everybody else did, that didn't give almost anything away. I have no idea what this movie's really about, but it just gave off vibes that this was going to be a disturbing movie, and that's what drew me in. But then there were other things, like they had other trailers, specifically one called the Heartbeat trailer, where they basically talked about Maika Monroe seeing Nicolas Cage for the first time, and it was in one of the main scenes of the movie, and how fast her heartbeat was going, and you can hear it. And they even had billboards with, like, images from the movie and a number to call to, like, talk to the serial killer. I haven't called it. I'm not going to. I think. So, basically, this movie was very, very hyped up. Does it meet the expectations? Let's talk about it a little bit. Starting off with the highs, the atmosphere of this movie is so... It's bleak, it's cold, it's very quietly disturbing. A lot of people have compared this movie to things like Seven and Silence of the Lambs and Zodiac, and I'm even going to say the Batman for certain reasons I'll get to in a minute, and rightfully so, but I think whereas all of those have a little bit more of a mainstream tone, this one feels very, very indie and very weird and cold and distant. It's the whole movie. It saturates the tone, but it just makes for such an interesting setting. Everything is just barren. It's wintertime. You can just feel how creepy it is. And of course, the direction of this movie by Perkins is so well done. There are so many shots where there's just like an open door in the back, or a hallway, or something like taking up half to more than half the frame, where your eye just goes, something's coming out of there. And it's interesting because with how this serial killer is, you know that that's probably not the case. You know there's not going to be just like a, hey, I'm here, and it's like a jump scare. It's not going to be like that, but it's just about the option, the looming presence of this character that we don't see for like at least the first half hour of the movie, in full at least. And it's always that consideration that it might happen. Kind of like The Invisible Man, where they would just sort of gradually push the camera over to a spot where no one's there, but someone could be. And there is a scene in this movie, or I should say a set of scenes, because it's a flashback to keep going back to, but specifically the opening scene. This is going to stick with me for a very, very, very long time. And it was... And it was only like 2 minutes. But man, it was chilling. Maika Monroe, I have seen her in a couple of things. She's most famously in a couple other horror movies like The Guest and, of course, It Follows, which is also a very just weirdly quiet horror movie. And it's funny because I actually didn't love It Follows the first time I saw it. I think I should revisit it and see if my perspective has changed on it. I didn't think it was actually that great, but there was something about it that was very different, and that's probably why they got her for this role, because it's sort of that same atmosphere. And in this movie, she plays depressed Keira Knightley. But her character in this, I found very interesting. She's very meticulous and quiet, a little bit antisocial. She's observant. She is always looking for clues everywhere that she goes, and she is portrayed as being sort of obsessed with her work, but not like you see in other ones where they're like pulling their hair out and they're staying up all night. I mean, you can tell she's just thinking all the time. And I really liked her character a lot. Funny enough, even though she doesn't really talk a whole lot in the movie or do a whole lot because she's such a reserved person, I actually found this to be probably her best role that I've seen so far, and the one that she could do the most with, because it's all very subtle. And I don't know, I just really liked her character. I also really liked Blair Underwood as the other agent that she, follows along with for most of the time. The first half of this movie is a lot of them going place to place, trying to figure this out and working together. And that's kind of why it reminds me of the Batman, because it felt like a very Batman Gordon vibe from this adaptation. Also just for the fact that there's these letters with like cryptograms and things like that, which is a very Riddler Zodiac thing to do. And I really liked him, their partnership was great. Alicia Witt did such a good job with this character where you're not quite sure for a long time if she's genuinely crazy, if she's with it but just traumatized. She just rides that line so well. There's a lot of times in movies where they'll shoot something one way, like the actor will take it one way as if they're very grounded, and then they'll shoot it another way, in this case that, she's genuinely crazy. And then they'll edit them together, like mishmash it so you aren't quite sure. And I have a feeling that's maybe what they did here. And she just did a very, very good job. Until recently, I definitely thought Alicia Witt was the girl in Don't Look Under the Bed from Disney Channel. She is not. Also, Kiernan Shipka is in this movie for like one scene, and the whole time I was looking at the screen going, they look familiar. Is that Kiernan Shipka? No, she's older than that. But it definitely looks like... And then it was. So, congrats me. Okay, but the star of this movie, Nicolas Cage. Wow, this man has got to be disturbed. Or he's just a really good actor. Or both. I don't want to say anything about what he looks like because they were very intentional in the marketing about not showing that. That was one of the scariest parts, and they knew it. But man, he is just disturbing. His character is disturbing because he's crazy enough. Not in a very Nicolas Cage way. I mean, I guess kind of, but not in a very No, it's outlandish. It's a very different type of crazy Nicolas Cage. But he's also... It's not so much that he's just completely lost his mind. He's crazy, that's it. He does have just the shred of knowing what he's doing and why he's doing it to make it that much more scary. And part of it is just that the things that he does are just so weird. Not even just the violent stuff, just he's weird. And he's weird for so long. There's some of these sequences that go on for a long time, and you're like, stop. Why are you doing this for like 5 minutes? I need it to end. I do have a kind of big low for the movie, and that is something that I think a lot of people have actually kind of agreed on, is the ending. Because for a while it's a very grounded movie, and it's slow paced, it's a slow burn, and you're just kind of in the moment. And then at the end they sort of they bring up this thing. I don't want to tell you what it is, but they bring up this thing that concludes the mystery, and they have to explain it really quickly over a couple of scenes, and it feels like it has to kind of go back and forth in the plot a little bit, and it just didn't feel like they had completely agreed on what they wanted to do with the movie. I actually feel like I had sort of the same comment about Maxine last week, but it felt like they sort of wanted to go one of two ways and sort of did both. And I have a rule when it comes to serial killer movies, or I should say maybe a preference, not necessarily a rule, but they definitely broke this rule preference. And it wasn't in a terrible way. It didn't make it super bad or anything. But I didn't love it. It just took me out of it just a little bit. And I think it was just because it had to be rushed a little bit. It delved into something that I didn't expect it really to actually go into. And going along with that, there's a part of Lee Harker's, character that comes up a good amount in at least the beginning of the movie, and they they kind of just forget about it later on. Like, it doesn't come up really ever again. And I just thought that was weird, considering it's something that could really help them out, or would just naturally come up. So, Longlegs, absolutely worth the hype, I would say, just in terms of its complete feel the whole time. And go watch this with people, because there are parts of this movie that had me jumping out of my seat, you know, because it was a jump scare, but not in the way that you're thinking, and just because it was so creepy. This is absolutely Nicolas Cage's, like, best creepy performance. He has a lot of them, but I think this is absolutely his best one. It was so well crafted. Again, the story got a little bit away, but for the most part, I really liked this movie. I thought, at least for a one-time viewing, accidentally from the second row of the screen, it was something I am not going to forget for a while. I'm going to give Longlegs a 3.5 out of 4. And I am, probably to no surprise, going to give it the Shell-Shocked Award. Well, guys, let me know what you thought of Longlegs. Is this something that you were looking forward to? Is it a pleasant surprise? How does it rank among a lot of the other horrors that have come out this year? Because honestly, it might be the top one. And as always, keep your hopes high, your stress low, and always keep an eye out. I'll see you guys later.